plenary assembly of the German Bishops' Conference, which was held this week in Augsburg, received a surprise just before it began. As such a surprise, unexpected, but also shocking. A letter from the Vatican. A letter from the Vatican signed by the Secretary of State and by the prefects of the dicasteries of the doctrine of the faith and of bishops. A letter which was addressed to ask the German bishops not to process the statutes of the so-called Synodal Council. Statutes that, had been approved, they would have led to the creation of this council, in which the bishops have a voice and vote, but also have voice and vote the laity who intervene in it, and who possibly would even be in the majority, in a number greater than of the bishops. Naturally, this would have meant introducing democracy in the Church, and would have been followed immediately and automatically by the equivalent councils, both in the diocese and in the parishes. The Church in Germany, diocese or parish, would have been run by the laity, and the bishops would have been one more in the whole democracy in the Church. The Vatican has been saying this for a long time, since the beginning of the German synodal path. It has been saying that it cannot be accepted, that it is unacceptable. Why? Because the mission of the priest, linked to the priestly ordination, linked to the sacrament, implies three conditions, three characteristics, what they call the priestly munus, the mission to govern, the mission to educate, and the mission to sanctify. Only the bishop who has the highest degree of the priesthood, the priest as the collaborator of the bishop, only they can govern the diocese or the parish, or in the case of the Pope, the Church. Only they alone can sanctify in the sense of celebrating the sacraments, which are the principal sanctifying instrument that the Church has, and only they can teach in the sense of having the ultimate responsibility for teaching. To give the power, for example, to govern the laity would have meant automatically changing the nature of the priesthood, in part at least, and possibly even sooner rather than later, reducing or ending the priesthood in the Catholic Church. The Vatican has taken it very seriously and has said that this cannot be done. But this is not a novelty. The Vatican has been telling the Germans for a long time that this cannot be done. Where is the novelty? It is not in the fact that in the last letter on the same thing, on the same subject, the signatories were Perlin, Secretary of State, Ladaria, Doctrine of the Faith, and Huth, bishops that now are in Perlin again, Fernandez, Doctrine of the Faith, and Prevost, bishops. That is not the novelty. The novelty is that for the first time, the Vatican tells the Germans that if they do not obey, there will be consequences. These two words, there will be consequences, are the ones that have led the president of the German bishops to say, we do not process this. These statutes, we obey the Church. We still see what happens after the dialogue that we are going to have, which they have been having for a long time. We will see what happens. But for the moment, we obey the Church. They have not been the arguments that have been given for a long time. They have been these two words, if you disobey, there will be consequences. Obviously, a decision of this type has already immediately brought about many consequences. For example, Cardinal Schönborn of Vienna, a person in some respects very close to the German thesis, in other respects not, has immediately intervened, saying that the German colleagues, that if they decided to disobey the Pope, to disobey this letter sent by these three cardinals explicitly in the name of the Pope, they were openly going into schism, and that they should realize the seriousness of what they were doing. Moreover, Schönborn has said that many in the Church are surprised and also concerned about the excessive prudence of the Vatican in dealing with the Germans, because they have allowed them to go too far. And he himself admits that he is also surprised at this enormous prudence. Cardinal Kasper, a German, also intervened immediately in the support of Schönborn, saying that indeed this could not be done, and that the German bishops could not go down this path. And another German, Cardinal Müller, also intervened, saying that the Vatican should send apostolic visitators to these dioceses to all the German dioceses, and for much less than that, inspections have been sent to other dioceses or religious congregations. On the opposite side, as was foreseeable, the uproar, the anger, the protests, the pressures have been enormous, and this is further proof that it has been allowed to go too far. The president of the Central Committee of the German laity has asked the bishops explicitly to disobey the Pope, to disobey Rome, and so has the vice president of the German laity. The old saying goes that better late than never. The decision of the Vatican is correct and must be supported without reservation. The Pope, through these three cardinals, has acted in fulfillment of his obligation, which is to keep the deposit of faith intact. We were dealing with an essential element that modifies the government of the Church and introduces democracy, and therefore relegates both the bishop and the priest in the end to the role of an employee. But for many of this comes late. When the synodal journey began, Cardinal Mueller said that the Vatican had to act immediately, and he recalled what happened when Luther began his reform of the Church, which ended in the creation of the distinct ecclesiastical community, the Lutherans, the evangelicals. He said that the Pope of that time acted late, and that is why Luther had plenty of time to organize himself in this schism. Mueller warned that it is necessary to act, and it is necessary to act quickly. The scandal that at this moment has been produced within an important part of the Catholic Church in Germany, which supports this synodal path, is a scandal for sure, which would have been less if this had been done before. Not only in Germany, but this virus has spread to a large part of the world, even in places where it should not or would not seem to exist. Several North American dioceses, for example, have decided to undertake a drastic reduction of parishes, transforming many of the current parishes into chapels that will be directed by the laity. The laity will be the ones to decide how it has to be done, and maybe we do not know. It is already being done in Germany. They will also decide what the priest has to preach, who will become in fact an employee, a level similar to the cleaning lady who cleans the temple. It is evident that this destroys the priesthood, and that if there are already few priests, there will be far fewer who will want to give their lives, not to the service of Christ and evangelization, but to become employees who are even told what to preach. But others are also of the opinion that this is not only late, that this should have been done earlier, but that is not enough for them. For example, why are German bishops being told not to go down this road without the synodal council? And because otherwise there will be consequences. And why are they not being told to prevent communion from being distributed to Protestants indiscriminately, as is already being done in many dioceses? If it is important to save the hierarchical nature of the Church, it will be as much or more important to avoid the sacrilege of giving communion, of giving the Lord to people that are not prepared and who do not even believe that Jesus is really present there, not only during Mass, but also after Mass. 2 words were enough to stop this drift of the Germans who are already on the verge of schism. There will be consequences. 2 very well pronounced words. We must applaud the Pope, the Vatican, for having pronounced them, and we must support him 100%. But I repeat, for many this comes a little late, although it's better late than never, and it feels like it's not much. Let us continue to pray. Until next week, God willing.